Hello everyone. This is the third part of the story I'm Voldemort. Chapter 19. Arriving at Hogwarts. The house elf popped Tom directly onto platform 9¾ so he didn't get the chance to run through the wall. As soon as Tom's feet touched the platform, the elf said its goodbyes and swiftly left to perform other elfly duties. The platform is packed with different families seeing their children off for another year at Hogwarts. Children dressed in robes and some muggleborns not already in their robes could be seen boarding an impressive red train. Tom decided to wear his wizarding robes even though he doesn't quite like wizarding fashion. He would have to wear the robes every day for the foreseeable future, so he might as well start now. He also took off his air rings, as he won't be revealing his airships to anyone just yet. Since he had no one to say goodbye to, Tom boarded the train and found an empty compartment all to himself. Looking out the window, a small part of Tom was jealous of the students with parents to see them off. The old Tom had no idea what he was missing out on, so he didn't feel this way, but the new Tom has Gregory's life experience. Gregory had loving parents that would have come to see him off as these children have. Since I don't have my own family, I'll just have to make my own as Voldemort did, except they won't be a bunch of racist murderers. I'll make the Death Eaters into something that even Harry Potter would be honored to call himself. Maybe I should change the name though. Whatever, I have time to think this stuff up. Tom swore to himself. Once it was time to set out and every student was on board, the train blew its whistle and moved down the tracks. Not long after the train set out, a knock could be heard on Tom's compartment door. Sigh, I was hoping to be left alone until we arrived. At least they have the manners to knock before entering. Tom thought. You may enter. He calls out loud enough for whoever is outside to hear. The door swings open to reveal a group of 3 first years. 2 boys and 1 girl. They peek their heads into the compartment and see that Tom is alone. Tom stands up as they enter the compartment, and gets ready to use his newly learned wizarding etiquette. Hello, all of the compartments leading to yours are full. Would you mind if we sit with you? I'm Orion Black, by the way. A slightly tall black-haired and gray-eyed boy with an aristocratic face introduces himself. No, please come sit. I'm Thomas Riddle, but you can call me Tom. Tom says, not hiding his muggle last name at all. Wasn't Orion the father of Sirius? Whatever, it doesn't matter, as the future will inevitably change due to my actions. Tom thought. Although Tom didn't hide his muggle name, due to his perfect etiquette and state of dress, the 3 purebloods second-guessed themselves. Is Riddle a pureblood house? Each of them thought and couldn't remember for sure whether it is or isn't. Thanks for the invitation. Searching for another compartment would have been tiring. Orion says, and seeing as he and Tom are already introduced, Orion introduces his 2 companions. These are my friends Abraxas Malfoy. He says and motions towards the white blonde-haired boy with silver eyes beside him, who simply nods towards Tom. Abraxas wouldn't waste his time with someone that isn't a confirmed pureblood. He looks a bit similar to his grandson Draco Malfoy. And Druella Rosier. Orion then motions towards a cute red-headed girl with green eyes. It's nice to meet you, Tom. Druella says with a small smile on her face. It's nice to meet you as well. Tom replies with his own smile in return. Well, feel free to settle in. It's a long ride to Hogwarts. At Tom's prompt, they make themselves at home and everyone sits down. Orion and Abraxas sit across from Tom and Druella. Throughout the ride to Hogwarts, Tom learned a bit about each person. Orion was a bit of a show-off, but he was good company as long as you are a fellow pureblood, of course. Abraxas is a very quiet person and barely contributed to the conversation. Lastly, Druella is a kind and happy girl. Although she does act a bit spoiled at times. By the time they arrived at Hogwarts, the sun was setting on the horizon. The group of 4 could be said to be almost friends after spending so much time together. Except for Abraxas, as he mostly stayed quiet the whole ride. Once the train stopped, the first years were led to the boats that would take them to the castle, while the second years and up-boarded carriages pulled by thestrals. Thestrals are skeletal creatures about the size of a horse, with a reptilian hide, white eyes, and leathery black wings. They are considered a breed of winged horse, and are only visible to those that have seen death. Many first-year students were confused as to how the older students would get to the castle in a carriage with no horses. Tom and a few unlucky others could see the thestrals as clear as day. This included his new group of friends. It surprised him that even Druella saw the thestrals. Tom shrugged it off and moved to the boat and boarded with Orion, Abraxas, and Druella. They floated over the Black Lake, and once they went under a bridge the castle was visible from a distance. It was truly a beautiful piece of architecture that caused many children to become speechless. Every first year was mesmerized and would tell the story of their first time seeing Hogwarts for years to come. Suddenly, a child fell off of his boat and into the cold water of the Black Lake. Many of the students gasped in shock as a few purebloods laughed and said something about stupid mudbloods. As the boy that fell into the lake tried and failed to swim, a giant tentacle breached the surface and wrapped around him. Screams of horror could be heard as the children saw a monster grab the drowning boy. Then the unthinkable happened. The tentacle picked the boy out of the water and placed him gently onto his boat. The tentacle then went back into the water and disappeared. Many students stared into the air, shocked at what just happened. The person that was guiding them towards the castle then goes on to explain about the Black Lake and its inhabitants. The mere people and the giant squid that just made its appearance. Once they arrived at the shore, everyone had already calmed down, and the boy that almost drowned was magically dried off. The first years were then taken to the front doors of Hogwarts, where they were greeted by Dumbledore himself. He invited everyone in and spotted Tom chatting with 3 pure-blood children from dark families. He expects Tom to be sorted into Slytherin based on the crowd he's surrounding himself with. I'll have to watch the boy carefully. I have a bad feeling about him, Dumbledore thought as he escorts the new first years into the castle. The other students have already arrived and are seated in the Great Hall. If you don't already know, you're all about to be sorted into one of the 4 houses of Hogwarts. They are Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin. In Hogwarts, your housemates are like your family. You will live with them, eat with them, and study with them. The remainder of your 7 years here will be spent in one of those houses. Dumbledore explains, and many children get nervous. Though you have nothing to worry about, as your house is chosen based on what would suit you. Now, I'm going to go and make sure everything is ready. Tidy yourselves up as you'll be in front of the whole school for the sorting. Chapter 20, Sorting. While waiting for Dumbledore to return, Druella asked Tom an important question. Tom, which house do you want to be in? She asks, and her 2 companions' ears perk up at the question. I don't really care which house I'm sorted into, but I'll most likely be in Slytherin. Tom answers. Why do you think you'll be in Slytherin? Because you're a pureblood. Abraxas speaks to Tom for the first time since he's met him. Who said that I was a pureblood? Tom asks aloud, and all 3 of them widen their eyes in shock. Is he actually not a pureblood? They all think at the same time. Even Abraxas, who doubted Tom at first, was starting to believe in Tom's blood purity. Before any of them could reply, Tom started talking again. As for why I believe I'll be in Slytherin, it's just a feeling I have. Although, I could probably fit in any of the houses. I like to think that I'm brave enough for Gryffindor, studious enough for Ravenclaw, loyal enough for Hufflepuff, and ambitious enough for Slytherin. Tom says, leaving the 3 even further shocked. As they were about to say something, Dumbledore returned and brought them into the Great Hall. The hall is exactly as it was in the movies. Floating candles lit up the room with 4 tables, grand tables. Looking up, Tom could see the beautiful night sky that's not polluted by the bright lights of London. At the back of the room opposite the entrance, the staff of the school sat and observed their new students. Tom didn't recognize anyone except Headmaster Dippet and Professor Slughorn. The first years were told to form a line in the middle of the room and wait patiently for their names to be called. Ever since Orion and Abraxas found out about Tom's blood status, they've been putting more and more space between them and him as every second goes by. As for Druella, she still stands next to him with an unsure look on her face. She was taught to avoid people like Tom, but she considers him a new friend. She didn't know whether to join her friends in distancing themselves or to stick by her new friend because that's what friends do. While Druella was having her inner crisis, Headmaster Armando Dippet stood from his seat and addressed his students. Welcome to the new first years and welcome back to our returning students. I know that all of you have had a long journey here and you want to eat, but we have to go about the sorting first. Let the sorting begin. He announces and Dumbledore brings up a stool and places a dusty hat on it. Oh God, here it comes. Tom thought as he knows what the hat is about to do. In times of old when I was new and Hogwarts barely started, the founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. United by a common goal, they had the self-same yearning to make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. And now the sorting hat is here and you all know the score. I sort you into houses because that is what I'm for. But this year I'll go further, listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to sort you, still I worry that it's wrong. Together we will build and teach. The four good friends decided. And never did they dream that they might one day be divided. For were there ever friends like Slytherin and Gryffindor? Like Helga and Rowena, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw? So how could it have gone so wrong? How could such friendships fail? Now, I was there and so can tell the whole sad, sorry tale. Said Slytherin, we'll teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw, we'll teach those whose intelligence is surest. Said Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot, and treat them just the same. These things were not a problem, when first they came to light. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted, so, for instance, Slytherin took only pure-blood wizards of great cunning, just like him. And only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw. While the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest, and taught them all she knew. So the houses and their founders were all friends and firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. But then anger crept up on us, feeding on our faults and fears. The houses that, like pillars four, had once held up our school, now turned upon each other and they tried to win and rule. And for a while it seemed the school must meet a sticky end. With dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend. And at last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out he left us quite downhearted. And never since the founders four were whittled down to three have the houses been united, as they once were meant to be. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Oh, know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows. For Hogwarts is in danger from our cruel and deadly foes. But maybe this year is different, as we have a special guest. He could bring about a hopeful change. It's for him I sing this sad, sad song. For will he truly bring about a change? Now that is a mystery. You must unite the broken houses or will crumble from within. I have told you. I have warned you. Let the sorting now begin. That was not what Tom was expecting to happen. He expected an annoying happy-go-lucky song about the houses and sorting. As the hat got to the part about the special guest, Tom could feel that it was talking about him. Was his presence here foretold by one of the founders? It could be that the castle is asking for help. Many of the fan fictions Tom has read say that the school is sentient. If it is, then it could have sensed Tom, as he owns the school, and reached out through the hat for his help. That seems to be an explanation worth looking into. I have to speak with the hat alone. I'll be able to speak to it when I'm called, I guess. Tom thought as the first batch of students were called up. Tom waited patiently for the students to be sorted into their houses. By the time his name was called, Orion, Abraxas, and Druella were already sorted into Slytherin and sitting among their new housemates. Thomas Riddle. Dumbledore called, and Tom walked up and took out his wand. Dumbledore dropped the hat onto the stool in reflex and almost reached for his wand, but then he heard the spell Tom called out. Scourgify, Tom called as he waved his wand. Suddenly, the dirty and dusty hat was cleaned and looking as good as new. Why didn't anyone think of this? The faculty and older students thought at the same time. Haha, I feel centuries younger. Thank you. The hat laughs as it wiggles its brim happily. You're welcome. Tom says as he takes the hat into his hands and places it atop his head. Hello, hat. Good evening, Slytherin. Chapter 21, Sorting, Part 2. Hello, Slytherin's heir. Might I say that it's splendid to have the first heir of Salazar Slytherin attending Hogwarts? Though I wasn't very close to the man, I was close to his best friend. The hat says in a delighted tone. Am I really the first heir of Slytherin to attend the school? Tom asks curiously. Not only that, but you are also the first Slytherin heir ever. All of Salazar's descendants before you didn't fit the bald snake's requirements. He was a man with very high expectations. The hat said, reminiscing the old days. So, what's with the song this year? Tom asks, bring the hat back from its memories. That is something you have to speak to Lady Hogwarts about. I was merely instructed to give a message. The hat says mysteriously. All right, what's the message? Tom asks. The message was already given. Once the houses are united, Lady Hogwarts will give you full control of the castle. The hat explains. I already own the place. Tom says, thinking that he could just take control as it's his property. Yes, on paper you do, but you don't own Lady Hogwarts. The castle has been sentient since the time of the founders, and you can't own a sentient being. You could try to take over forcibly, but she wields the power of multiple intersecting ley lines. She passively uses more magic in a day than 100 normal wizards use in a lifetime. You have to earn her loyalty in order to gain control of the castle, and let me tell you, having full access to the castle ward stone will make you nearly invincible on Hogwarts grounds. The hat says, enticing Tom to complete Lady Hogwarts' mission. Fine, I'll see what I can do. But no promises. Tom agrees but doesn't look hopeful as the houses have hated and made fun of each other for a long time. Good. On behalf of Lady Hogwarts, I thank you for coming to her aid. The hat says respectfully. Sigh, this isn't going to be easy. Tom thought to himself. Gryffindor, in the eyes of the other houses, is seen as the house for idiotic wannabe heroes that act first and think later. Ravenclaws are thought of as nerdy bookworms that constantly have their nose in a book. Hufflepuff is thought of as the house of the leftovers, and Slytherin is the house of dark wizards and blood purity bigots. Now, how is Tom supposed to unite these houses that do nothing but badmouth one another? Tom wouldn't be surprised if duels happened regularly between members of different houses. Not all of them do this, but many would rather keep the company of their own house. Why haven't you breached my mind to see what house I belong in? Tom asks as the hat hasn't read his mind at all. The only thing the hat is currently doing is communicating with Tom telepathically. The hat is basically standing outside of his Wakandan shield and yelling into Tom's inner world. It wouldn't matter if I did, as Salazar had clear directions. If an heir of his were to enroll in Hogwarts, I am to sort them into Slytherin no matter what. The hat explains. Well, my job is done. Goodbye, Slytherin. The hat yells the last word out loud for everyone in the Great Hall to hear. Wait, how can I contact you or Lady Hogwarts? Tom asks quickly. You don't. The hat said as Dumbledore pulled the hat off of Tom's head. While Tom was ignoring everyone in the Great Hall and talking with the hat, it took almost 4 minutes for his sorting to end. Once the hat called out Slytherin, everyone at the Slytherin table remained quiet. Not a single sound of celebration could be heard from the entire house. The older students who were more knowledgeable knew that Riddle wasn't a pure-blood house, unlike Tom's friends who are first years. Those that weren't sure just followed the older kids' lead. The other house merely clapped lightly out of courtesy. As Dumbledore took the hat off of Tom's head, he couldn't help but sigh. Maybe Slytherin house will knock some sense into the boy. Although, I wouldn't wish any Muggleborn to be sorted into Slytherin. Dumbledore thought as he knew the coming years would be eventful, one way or another. First, we get a foreboding song from the hat, and now I have to worry about a kid, who could be some sort of serial killer, being sorted into a den of snakes. Why can't my job be easier? After the hat is taken from Tom's head, he stands up and walks to the Slytherin table. None of the children wanted to sit next to him, so they bunched together to block him from sitting next to them. As Tom was about to give up and sit at the end of the table, a female voice could be heard calling him over to her. Tom, come sit next to me. Druella calls as she pushes a fellow first year, who was sitting next to her, to make room for Tom. After a few more first years got sorted, the sorting ended and the headmaster Dippet gave a short speech about a new year and prohibiting children from entering the Forbidden Forest. Food then appeared on every table, and the students and staff dug into the feast before them. Once everyone was finished eating, the students were guided to their common rooms. Tom and the other first years were taken to the dungeons, where they were brought to a stone wall. One of the older students said the password, and the wall opened, revealing the Slytherin common room. The prefect guiding them also warned of forgetting the password or giving out said password to non-Slytherin students. Once all of the children entered the common room, Professor Slughorn, who is the head of Slytherin House, gave a speech and listed off a few rules. Basically, he said that Slytherin is like a family, and we should act as such. Especially in front of other houses. Slughorn offered his time to speak with any student about problems they may face in the coming year, and handed out class schedules. Before leaving, Slughorn bragged a bit about his prestigious Slug Club, and told everyone that their rooms were labeled with their names on the door. When Slughorn left, every Slytherin student went their own way and ignored Tom's presence. These students were keeping their distance as if Tom carried a deadly virus. They wouldn't go within 10 feet of him, and that included Orion and Abraxas. Orion was a bit more subtle with it, but Abraxas was sending Tom sideways glares whenever he had the chance. The only person that stayed by Tom's side is Druella. She may be a blood purist like her family, but once she calls somebody her friend, she holds true to her word. Throughout all of this, Tom was happy that Slytherins received their own rooms. He could tell that everyone in the house was shunning him, besides Druella, of course. Tom could also tell that if he tried to confront any of these people, they would most certainly react violently. Tom merely shrugged, as he had a feeling that this would happen. He would have to wait and show these purebloods that he is a far more skilled wizard than any of them. Purebloods respect power, and Tom would have that in spades sooner or later. That's one of the reasons Voldemort won them over in canon. Might is right, after all. If Tom had an overwhelming power to support him, these children would fall in line fairly easily. Maybe a few would put up a resistance, but Tom can deal with a few children easily. It's their parents he worries about. If I want to bring the houses together again, as the hat said, I'll have to start with the most problematic house, Slytherin. It would have to be purged of the bigotry and hate before I can even think of other houses. I just have to keep with my training plan and do the best I can in my classes. Tom thinks as he and Druella go searching for their rooms. Chapter 22, A Duel Between Friends. The girls' dormitory is separated from the boys', so Druella and Tom had to separate. It's up a flight of stairs that's warded against boys. Tom was a bit worried about his new friend. Druella is his first real friend in this world, and she picked a horrible time to come into his life. He's just worried that the Slytherin girls will bully her for being close to the mudblood. In these people's eyes, Tom isn't even a half-blood. He's a Muggleborn that was sorted into the great house of Salazar Slytherin. Girls can be very mean when they want to be, and he worries for his friend's safety. He knows that they are just kids, but who knows if one of them throws a curse at her and maims or worse kills hers. As Tom was thinking of this, he found his room fairly easily. It was very easy to find as it had the words Dirty Mudblood carved into the wooden door directly under his nameplate. Tom merely sighed and walked into his new room. Thankfully, nothing in the room was damaged. Tom knew things like this would happen, but it's still annoying to have to deal with it. Though he did prepare for this. He read about wards and found something that even someone of his skill level can do with a bit of difficulty. He pulled his pendant-sized trunk off of his bracelet, enlarged the trunk, and pumped a bit of magic into the lock to open it. Tom searches through his trunk until he found his carving tools. He then walked to the door and spent the next half an hour carving some fairly easy runes and arrays into the door. Although the runes are easy, that doesn't mean they were easy to him. He's only had a month of magic study and practice. Even with his perfect recall, he still needs more time to hone his skills. Tom can remember the runes and arrays perfectly, but he needs more time to practice carving them. Once he was finished carving, Tom double-checked everything just to be sure. He doesn't want the door to implode on itself because of faulty carving. As he saw that everything seemed good, he placed his hand on the center of an array and activated the ward. The door shone faintly for a moment as the ward was powered by Tom's magic. The ward itself is nothing that special. It will reinforce the door magically and no one but Tom can get in, as the key to enter is Tom's magic. That will simultaneously keep people out and power the ward regularly. Once Tom finished with his work, he walked out of the room to test it. Everything worked perfectly, and as he was about to go back into his room, he heard a group of girls arguing. Worried that it may be Druella being picked on, Tom follows the voices to the stairs that lead to the girls' dormitory. As he was about to peek up the stairs, he suddenly heard Druella's voice yell the name of a spell. Depulso. She yelled and suddenly an older female student came flying down the stairs and smacked into the floor. As Tom stepped around the knocked-out older girl, he could see an irate Druella holding her wand and threatening some other girls. Maybe I was worrying for nothing? She seems to be able to handle herself fairly well. Tom thought as a small smile appeared on his lips. Hey, Drew. He called out. Did you find your room already? Druella glances sideways towards Tom while keeping her wand trained on the frightened elder students. At first, they wanted to help Druella and explain that her friend is a dirty mudblood, but Druella just wouldn't listen. Seeing as she wanted to be friends with Muggleborn filth, they decided to start bullying her as Tom feared. Except it didn't go well for them, based on the knocked-out girl that just flew down the stairs. Now the elder students can't even draw their wands, as Druella has hers pointed at them waiting for the slightest twitch to send them hurtling down the stairs as well. Yeah, I did. Did you find yours as well? Druella says as she shoos the older students away with her wand. You can go now. Yeah, I already settled in. Do you want to go and explore for a bit before bed? Tom says as he completely ignores the now retreating students. Yeah, let's go. And Drew, really? She says with a happy smile as the students have already left. I think it fits you. Tom says as they walk off. Druella and Tom explore the dungeons outside of the Slytherin common room. The castle is far too big for them to go too far, as it's already getting late. While they walk, Tom decided to get a bit serious. You do know that being friends with me will alienate you from the rest of our house, right? Tom says as they walk the empty halls. Yeah, but when I make friends I don't just abandon them like some people. She says referring to Orion and Abraxas. Well, maybe not Abraxas, as he didn't talk enough to become friends with Tom. Alright, but what will your parents think? Aren't they hardcore blood purists? Tom asks. Yeah, but it's not like I'm going to marry you. They'll be mad for a bit, but I'll work my magic and they'll get over it. She says with a small laugh. Alright, but if it's going to be me and you against the world, we need to take some precautions and start your training. I can't have my first friend getting bullied, hurt, or worse. Tom says, and Druella raises an eyebrow at him. You do know that I was trained in magic years before you even received your acceptance letter? She says with a bit of arrogance in her voice. Oh, really? I propose a bet. We will have a friendly duel. If I win, you will follow my training schedule. Tom offers with a confident smirk. What do I get when I win? She asks with her own confident smirk. What do you want? Tom asks back. I want you to be my servant for an entire day. She says with an innocent expression. All right, deal. Tom agrees easily. This place is as good as any, so let's have our duel now. Hee, I can't wait to have my own manservant, Druella says as they stand 15 feet apart and take out their wands. We'll see what happens. Are you ready? Tom asks as he pulls out a shiny gold galleon. Yeah, how should we start this? Drew asks. I'm going to toss this coin between us. The second it hits the ground, the duel will commence. Tom says and tosses the coin. The coin flips through the air, flipping as it makes its way to the stone floor of the dungeon floor. As they heard it hit the ground, each of them fires a spell. Locomotor Mortis. Drew yelled as lightning sparked on her wand. Protego. Tom called as the lightning shot from her wand. The magical lightning traveled through the air and impacted an invisible shield before it could touch Tom. The spell bounced off the shield and impacted the dungeon's ceiling. Druella, who wasn't taking the duel seriously a moment ago, became extremely serious. Protego isn't a spell that first years are taught, as it's hard to picture something invisible. Even her parents haven't taught her that spell yet. When Tom saw her confident smirk disappear, he smiled and motioned for her to bring it on. Titilando. She calls and Tom sidesteps another bolt of magic, but Druella was hoping for this. Stupefy. She calls and aims her wand at where Tom is stepping. Protego, Locomotor Mortis, Stupefy, Expelliarmus. Tom says consecutively, and a shield once again blocks Druella's attack. Then he fires the same leg-locking curse that she fired at him, and she sidestepped it fairly easily. Then came the last two spells, which caused her a bit more trouble. Although she was able to dodge being stupefied, in order to do so she had to dive to the ground. The second she landed on the ground, the last spell hit her, and Druella's wand launched out of her hand, landing a few feet in front of where Tom is standing casually. It looks like I've won. Tom calls it as he steps forward and picks up her wand. Training starts bright and early at 3 a.m. every morning. Be up and ready by then, please. Chapter 23, Classes. After winning the duel, Tom went back to the dormitory to sleep for the next day. Druella was very pouty after her loss, but she would keep her word. The next morning, Tom woke up bright and early as usual. After quickly cleaning himself up a bit, he waited for Druella at the bottom of the stairs. She actually arrived on time, but with every step she took, she glares at Tom for making her wake up so early. She is a growing girl and needs her beauty sleep, after all. They went and searched the castle for some sort of unused room that they can use for their training. They ended up finding an abandoned room in the dungeons that's almost as big as a gymnasium. A few Scourgify spells here and there and the place was perfect. Tom has been exercising his magic but not his body, so he decided that he'd do some exercises to stay in shape before getting to magic. Druella was furious when he told her to start running with him. Witches and wizards are not the athletic types, as they have the crutch that is magic supporting them. After running around the room a few times, they did basic exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, etc. Once they finished working their muscles, neither of them wanted to get up off the cold floor. "I hate this," Druella said as she melts into the floor. "Me too, but with perseverance, we will have stronger and better-looking bodies than our peers. We'll also become better duelists," Tom says, and Druella was already sold at having a better body than her peers. She's a girl, after all. After tiring their bodies, Tom started a lesson on occlumency. Druella has already learned a bit of it, but not to the same extent as Tom. He needed her to be able to protect his secrets before he can even think of telling her anything. Although, that wouldn't happen for a while. Until then he will help fortify her mind. Once Tom finished his lesson on occlumency, they both took out books they were working on and studied for a bit. Tom would practice spells with her, but he does that before bed. He made sure to tell her to do that as well though. After about an hour of reading, they went back to the dormitory to clean themselves up and went for breakfast in the Great Hall. They ate at the end of the table away from the other Slytherins. Orion was looking at Tom and Druella with a complicated expression, while Abraxas completely ignores them and eats among his fellow purebloods. Breakfast was fairly quick and the students were told to go to their first classes. All first years at Hogwarts must take 9 core subjects: Transfiguration, Charms, Potions, History of Magic, Dark Arts, Defense, Astronomy, Herbology, and Flying Lessons. Although flying lessons can be dropped upon entry into the second year. Today is Monday, so Tom has History of Magic and Transfiguration. Tuesday is Charms and Defense. Wednesday is Flying Lessons and Herbology. Thursday is Dark Arts and Potions. Friday is Astronomy, which takes place at midnight. After that is the weekend, so no classes. Then it picks back up again on Monday. Druella and Tom walked to classes together and sat next to each other in every one. History of Magic and Transfiguration were the same as in the movie. History is taught by the same ghost, Professor Binns. He wasn't what all of the fan fictions made him out to be. He wasn't monotone and boring, nor did he spend all of his time on Goblin Wars. Tom enjoyed being taught by a ghost, as it was interesting to watch. After history was lunch, where once again Tom and Druella ate at the end of the table away from everyone else. Transfiguration, on the other hand, was hard to get through for Tom, as Dumbledore would watch him like a hawk. Tom felt as if he were just waiting to nitpick at anything Tom did wrong. Tom couldn't even whisper or pass notes to Druella, as Dumbledore would take house points away. When that first happened, the other Slytherin first years would glare at Tom and Druella like their worst enemy. Sigh, did no one tell these children that winning the house cup gets them nothing? The cup goes on a shelf that belongs to none of the students until next year. There's no point in worrying over house points. Tom sighed. After classes ended for the day, Tom and Druella hung out together and tried to meet some of the members of the other houses. If they couldn't be friends with those in their house, they might as well mingle with the rest. Gryffindor was impossible to make friends with, as the rivalry between the two houses has long been sour. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were fairly welcoming, and they made a few friends here and there. The week passed and Tom has sat through the first class of every subject. In the mornings he trains and studies with Druella, and at night he practices spells until he's exhausted. Druella does the same and is starting to believe Tom when he said her magical reserves would grow. All of the classes were as they were in the Harry Potter fictions. Except for Dark Arts and Potions. Dark Arts because it was never a class in the story, and Potions because Slughorn was actually a good teacher compared to Snape. Dark Arts is taught by a man that you wouldn't expect to be a master of the dark arts. He looks like a well-groomed happy guy and smiled almost all the time. He seemed perfectly sane, and he was the complete opposite of any Death Eater from canon Harry Potter. The first lesson was about how to protect your mind, body, and soul while practicing the dark arts. Dark Arts was truly Tom's favorite class so far. The dark arts, also known as dark magic, refers to any type of magic that is mainly used to cause harm. The dark arts encompass many spells and actions ranging from using the unforgivable curses, which wouldn't be taught as they are illegal, to brewing harmful or poisonous potions to breeding dark creatures such as basilisks. The class was introduced by Morgana Le Fay, and she was the first person to teach the class at Hogwarts. Many of the more light-centered families usually pull their children from this class, and the school allows it. When the weekend came, Tom wanted to go to the room of requirement. The problem was, he didn't fully trust Drella yet. Mainly because her clemency could be breached at any time. Drella and Tom are together almost all the time and he doesn't want to bring her with him. The room of requirement is far too valuable to be leaked to anyone, so he wants to go alone. Since he can't take her with him, he plans to sneak out of the dormitory and spend the night there exploring all the room has to offer, as his days are spent mostly with Drella. He also wants to go to the Chamber of Secrets, but that will wait until Tom is strong enough. There's a basilisk down there and Tom doesn't know if it would attack him or not. That snake has been living in isolation for a long time, so who knows what it would do. On the other hand, it could be perfectly harmless to Tom, as he is the heir to Slytherin, but he doesn't know this for sure. Instead of rushing in head first, Tom will wait, bide his time, and get stronger. When he's strong enough to at least run away, Tom will go down and see if the big snake is friendly or not. On Saturday night, when Drella had already gone to her room to practice spells, Tom creeped out of the Slytherin common room and went straight to the 7th floor. Once he made it up the constantly changing stairs, Tom looked for the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. After searching for a few minutes, he found it and knew that the entrance is directly across from the tapestry. Tom took a deep breath and imagined what he wanted the room to have. Suddenly, a door appeared on the empty wall and Tom walked in. Chapter 24, ROR aka Room of Requirements. Before entering the Room of Recruitment, ROR, Tom wanted the room to show him all of its contents. As the door closed behind him, it disappeared and a simple wall was left behind. When Tom stepped into the room, it was filled with books, artifacts, gold, jewels, and tons of other junk. The room looked like it went on and on without end. Some places have piles of junk stacked high and others are organized neatly on shelves. Tom knew that he wouldn't be able to make a dent in this mess alone. He originally thought to get a bunch of trunks to rob this place. Trunks and trunks and trunks until he looted the place clean. But Tom doesn't need to rob the ROR as he owns the whole castle. Why waste his time looting things that he already owns? Sooner or later he'll reveal his airships and ownership of the castle. No one would be able to bar him from the castle. Especially if Lady Hogwarts gives Tom full control. He'll have to make the ROR a bit more hidden and fortified though. After browsing for a short amount of time, Tom left the room and went back in after thinking of what he needed. He walked in again and found 3 books on a table. These books are everything Hogwarts has on the trace that's probably now in his wand. Once he got these specific books, he left again and went back in. This time the room is a giant library. Tom asked for every book on Hogwarts grounds. He also tried to be more specific and asked for them to be well organized. Also, he wanted there to be an area for reading, like a couch or something. Him going into detail paid off and the room made everything as he desired. The rest of the night was spent reading up on the trace. He learned that the trace is placed in a wand the second a student enters the Hogwarts wards. Once the wards catalog a student as having the trace, it will no longer try to insert the trace again. As a 7th year leaves the school for the last time, the trace is removed by the wards as well. The way it's removed is actually explained in the last book. Once the trace is removed, no one in the school or government is notified, and the only way to know that the trace is gone is to cast a few diagnostic spells on his wand. I don't think that I have to worry too much about that happening. Even if someone does end up doing it one day, I can just play dumb and say I have no idea how the trace works. Tom thought. Tom somehow made it through all 3 books with a bit of time to spare, so he decided to try and see if his perfect recall could come in handy for something. He left the room again and thought of the exact ritual that is needed to remove the trace. Using his perfect recall to the max, Tom added as many extra details as he possibly could. Once he was finished, Tom entered the room and everything was as he thought. The room of requirement was definitely used for rituals. Tom thought as he looks around the room and sees the ritual described to remove the trace set up perfectly. As long as you have the ingredients in Hogwarts, setting up the ritual is as easy as giving the room some instructions. With this, I can practice rituals without having much experience in creating them. The floor of the room was covered in arrays and runes written in different inks and types of blood. Candles are placed at various sections, and in the center of it all is a pedestal to place his wand. Tom walks carefully in between the arrays and runes, as not to smudge anything. Once he gets to the center of the room, he places his wand on the pedestal and backtracks his way out the same way he came. Once he was out of the ritual area, Tom walks over to a certain array and places his hand in the middle of it. He then pumps a bit of his magic into the array, and the whole ritual area lights up like a Christmas tree. Tom actually didn't need to supply that much magic, as the castle took over and pumped magic straight from the ley lines under it. This room was 100% made for rituals. Tom nodded his head. Once the light got to its brightest, there was a sound signifying the breaking of the trace. It sounded like a glass shattering. Tom's bone-looking wand glowed for a moment after the sound and the ritual ended. The light from the arrays and runes disappeared, and Tom walked over to grab his wand. Now that the trace is gone, I can use magic as much as I want when I leave school. World War II should be starting next year, so being able to use magic will help a lot. Maybe I should kill Hitler? Being known as the guy that killed the most hated man ever would be pretty cool. I bet people would line up for days to see the memory of me killing Hitler. Grindelwald too, if I'm strong enough by that time. No reason to give Dumbledore fame and an overpowered wand. Tom put these thoughts to the back of his mind for now. After the ritual was completed, Tom left the room and thought of a comfortable bedroom. He needed to get some sleep and the common rooms lock after a certain time. Once he had a good place to sleep, Tom spent some time practicing magic until he exhausted himself and swiftly went to sleep. The next day, Tom wakes up and rushes back to the common room to pick up Druella for their training. The second he gave the password and entered, Druella could be seen sitting on the couch waiting for him. "Where were you? I knocked on your door last night and you didn't answer," she asks with an upturned eyebrow. The girls' dormitory may be warded against men, but the boys' isn't warded against anyone. Does the school not think women can be creeps too, or that couples won't just go to the boys' dorms? Tom sighed in his mind as he wishes she would just leave it alone. "What were you doing at my door last night anyway? Wanted to sneak in and do horrible things to me in my sleep?" Tom jokes and tries to change the subject. "What, no. It's the weekend, so I thought we could hang out and play some chess or something," she says as she turns her nose upwards at Tom. "Now stop trying to change the subject and tell me already." "I can't tell you. I won't lie and say I was exploring or something like that, but I won't be saying where I was and what I was doing," Tom says, not wanting to lie to his first friend that ruined her reputation for him. Sigh, "Fine, but I expect an explanation sooner or later." She sighs and decides to drop it for now. "Thanks, now are you ready for our training?" Chapter 25. Time Skip. Time passed quickly and before Tom knew it Christmas break had arrived. Throughout almost 4 months at Hogwarts, Tom has shown his skills in every class. He purposefully gets the best grades in all classes, to boost his reputation as much as possible. Also, Tom has tried his best to be friendly with every house, as he has a mission from Lady Hogwarts to complete. This even includes Gryffindor, and he has started making some headway in that house. Due to the other Slytherins ignoring Tom and Druella's existence and openly badmouthing them, Gryffindor and the other houses have started to see them as good people that were sorted into the wrong house. This has helped Tom and Druella make many friends outside of Slytherin House. As for Slytherin House itself, there's been very little headway made on that front. Although some of the students have started to respect Tom for his skill in magic, they still won't be caught dead fraternizing with a mudblood. Tom did learn a bit about how Slytherin House operates though. Slytherin is nothing like the other houses. The house is led by the students with the highest standing and most connections in a sort of council. They are like the cool kids that everyone wants to be friends with, but they also hold the most power among the Slytherin students. The current students in the council are some of the grandparents or great-grandparents to some canon Death Eaters. As long as Tom and Druella don't ruin the reputation of the house or lose an obscene amount of house points, the council tends to leave them alone. In fact, if Tom wasn't a mudblood, they would be singing his praises due to how many house points he has gained them. Being the top student among the first years has awarded him a ton of house points, even if he thinks they're pointless. Other than that, Tom and Druella have been staying as low as possible when it comes to their house. Orion and Abraxas still ignore them as usual, but Orion may be coming around. He seems to be friendly with Druella again, but that only tends to happen when no one else is around. Tom has also been visiting the ROR regularly to find anything that might pique his interest. He's found many books that were either from the restricted section or someone's personal collection. Just to test it, he's been taking books he knows are from the library, and checking to see if they're still there or not. He learned that they remained in the library even though the exact copy is in his trunk. That taught him that, at least for books, the ROR made copies instead of taking the real ones. After learning this, Tom didn't feel scared to take as many books as he wanted. Although Tom didn't have room in his trunk to take ones he already read with him, so he would put them back in the ROR once he's finished. He has perfect recall anyway, so what's the point in hoarding the books? He also owns the castle, so what's the point in taking books he's already read? Through the past months, Tom has been mainly studying rituals, runes, arrays, and dark magic. Rituals because he found the cheat that is the ROR, and runes and arrays because they're a part of rituals. Although they can be used in things like enchanting as well, but Tom hasn't had time to look into that yet. He hasn't done a single ritual since the wand, as he wants to find the perfect first ritual to enhance his body, soul, mind, and magic. He needs a good base for other future rituals to build off of. As for the dark arts, the canon Tom was a prodigy when it came to dark magic. He didn't want to waste his potential, so he decided to fully commit to the dark arts. Although many precautions had to be made before he could fully dive into the cesspool that is dark magic. As his dark arts teacher says, when using dark magic one must know their limits and cleanse themselves regularly. He says this because using dark magic is like poison to the body and mind. It can turn the most kind-hearted person into a ruthless murderer if not used properly. So, Tom read as many books as possible about protecting the mind, body, and soul while practicing dark magic. They all said to first, perform a cleansing ritual regularly. These rituals are simple and would cleanse any residual dark magic from the body. That residual dark magic is what happens when performing this kind of magic over a period of time. If someone performed this ritual on a canon Death Eater or even Voldemort himself, the amount of dark magic cleansed from them would be immense. Other than doing the cleansing ritual, the book said that a clemency is a smart road to follow, as a secure mind isn't easily swayed. With both body and mind taken care of, Tom found the soul isn't something he has to worry so much about. The book stated that the only way dark arts could affect his soul is if Tom purposeful tries to perform dark magic on it. Similar to how canon Tom ripped his soul in half to make Horcruxes. He has nothing to worry about as long as he keeps his mind and body safe. With the knowledge on how to stay safe while practicing the dark arts, Tom delved as deep as he could into them. He especially spent some time learning the unforgivables. He added them to his nightly practice as soon as he could. They may be illegal, but they are the best spells for an emergency. Facing a foe that is giving you a hard time? One-shot him with the killing curse. Need some information fast? Imperio the person to tell you everything. Run into a rapist, murderer, or any other all-around garbage person. Crucio them for a couple of minutes before putting them out of their misery. These spells will most definitely come in handy. Especially if Tom wishes to defeat Grindelwald before Dumbledore does. Tom has landed himself in a fairly dangerous world, and he needs every tool at his disposal to carve out a place for himself in it. Other than that, Tom and Druella have kept up with their training every morning. Druella now trusts Tom 100% when he says anything about magic. Since following Tom's training schedule, she's seen the fruits of her labor. She's been counting her lucky stars that she met Tom and became his friend. Just the magic reserve increase alone will make her into a powerhouse in the future. When Christmas break finally came, Tom and Druella left the castle and boarded the Hogwarts Express together. Once they arrived at King's Cross Station, Tom met Druella's parents. They glare for a moment before turning their noses up at him and dragging Druella off. Throughout the whole ordeal, Druella was laughing at Tom's predicament. "Bye, Tom. See you after the break," she yelled as her parents dragged her off. Tom waved goodbye and looked around for whoever was supposed to take him home. After searching for a minute, he just decided to call for the night bus. Once he arrived at the orphanage, Tom said some pleasantries to the matron and went straight to his room. The children continued to keep their distance, and even the new ones knew to leave Tom alone. "Mimsy," Tom calls as he closed the door to his bedroom. "Master." Mimsy appears with a pop and grabs his leg while crying loudly. "What's the matter? Did something happen?" Tom asks with a worried expression. "No, Mimsy just missed you," she says as she wipes some snot from her face. Master says not to go bothering him at school, so Mimsy listened like a good elf. "The only reason that I don't want you visiting the school is I can't reveal myself just yet." "It's not about being bothered by you, Mimsy," Tom says, and Mimsy nods with a smile on her face. "Are you okay now?" "Yes, Mimsy is fine," she says as she wipes her tears away. "Good, because I need my head elf to take me to Gringotts. Can you do that for me?" Tom says, trying to cheer up his favorite elf. "Leave it to me," she says happily. "Good, we'll leave after the matron comes to say it's time for bed." When it came time to leave, instead of putting on his mask, Tom downs a polyjuice potion keyed to a Muggle-born student from Hogwarts. Tom's body morphs and changes to match said student perfectly. Mimsy freaked out a bit, as she's never seen a polyjuice potion before, but after explaining everything, she calmed down fairly easily. "All right, Mimsy. Let's go," Tom says and takes Mimsy's hand, and with a pop, they disappeared from the orphanage. This marks the end of part 3 of the story I'm Voldemort. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.